back in the day, DC Comics would have a summer event and a winter event, and that would basically be it for the year. But even with Marvel and DC nowadays, it's like Pride Month. Every day is Pride Month. Every month is an event month. Sometimes at Marvel and DC, you'll have 2 and maybe 3 events going on in a single month. And we've got a big one coming up, a huge one called Absolute Power. Huge as in the implications of the universe. I'm not really sure. I'm not sold on that, but certainly huge by the page count and the amount of comic books that are be going into this. We did get the DC Comics solicitations for July 2024. And by the time July is over, we will have had 18 issues associated with Absolute Power leading into it and actually telling the story and all that stuff. I do not think it will be quite as big as Blood Hunt over at Marvel Comics, which is about 60 issues. But I do believe Absolute Power will get very near 50 by the time it's over. Is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Well, for me personally, I am not exactly buying into Absolute Power. In fact, I'm abstaining, at least from the mainline series and anything Mark Waid is associated with. Why? Because I don't personally like Mark Waid at this point. I haven't liked Mark Waid actually in a very, very long time, but I was willing to overlook some of his, personal issues, his stuff that he does outside of comic books, but eventually enough is enough, and I've said, fuck that guy. He can kiss my hairy beanbag. I'm not going to read any comic books that he does, and you can tell me that Absolute Power is the greatest event since Blackest Night, and I really won't give a fuck. But I do owe it to you guys to at least cover everything that's going on news-wise within comic books. So I will cover Absolute Power and all the stuff happening in July and leading up to it. We do have a free comic book day going out there, and someone has already given the 411 that it is, in fact, very, very good. And I'm not surprised, but I don't really care to actually go out there and actually taste it myself because I'm just not going to support that guy. But not everybody feels the same way I do. If you've chosen to forgive Mark Waid or ignore the fact that he said he would like to see the industry burn, that is your business, and you can support and read whatever comic books that you want, and I will give you the information out there and arm you with a little bit of knowledge going into this thing, and the fact that you're probably investing, I don't know, upwards of $200 cover price just to read the whole damn thing. Likely even more than that, maybe even closer to $250. First up, we've got Absolute Power Ground Zero. This oversized one-shot acts as a prelude to Absolute Power event, in which, according to DC, the key to capturing all metahuman powers on planet Earth will finally be unlocked. The special issue will act as a bridge between recent events in Batman, Superman, Action Comics, and Suicide Squad Dream Team, and we'll see the full scope of Amanda Waller's plan finally unveiled. The issue has a starry cast of creatives involved, including Mark Waid, Nicole Maines, Joshua Williamson, and Chip Zdarsky, along with artists Gleb Melnikov, V.K. Marion, and Skylar Partridge, plus a main cover by Dan Mora. I think it's really, really strange that you've got Mark Waid, Chip Zdarsky, Josh Williamson on a book, and you put Nicole Maines before the other two. Well, obviously, you got to put Mark Waid first because he's the architect, he's the guy in charge of the event. But nobody reads a book because Nicole Maines is on it. In fact, you probably shouldn't even have mentioned that and just let it be a little surprise for people. Fortunately, this isn't $8 or $9, which it certainly would be if Marvel Comics were producing it. It's only going to be $5. So it's not that expensive. And you do get maybe DC Comics' 3 biggest writers at the moment. Chip Zdarsky's obviously on Batman, Josh Williamson on Superman, Mark Waid doing the big event, and then throw in Nicole Maines or whatever. Chip Zdarsky is struggling mightily on Batman at this point. Josh Williamson doing a great job. In fact, House of Braniac is a lot of fun. Mark Waid can go fuck himself. I don't really care. Josh Williamson obviously being the standout. Really, amongst today's comic book writers working at DC and Marvel, he's number one if you haven't noticed. He does write a lot, but the books that he writes are certainly by and far, like on average, selling better than everybody else. He's like the number one guy. That kind of tells you where comic books are. Not that Josh Williamson is a bad guy or a bad writer, but he's not a superstar. He's not a superstar writer by any means. He's never actually nailed a landing on an event, which I hope he does with House of Braniac, which I don't even really consider an event. I consider it a crossover between Action Comics and Superman with a little tie-in flavor in Power Girl, which nobody reads or cares about, and some backup stories in Green Lantern. As far as the artists, I think they've done a really good job. I think Gleb Melnikov is awesome. I think he's a fantastic artist. I think V.K. Marion is really, really underrated and underutilized. The fact that he hasn't gotten like a really ongoing cool series at Marvel or DC at this point, I think is a bit of a travesty. And Skylar Partridge, is a really good artist, is probably not a great fit for superhero comic books, but is a really good artist. So at least they went out there and got somebody that was really good, even if their style doesn't really fit superheroes, but Gleb Melnikov's absolutely does, and certainly V. Ken Marion does as well. So it's a pretty decent team on there. $5 is not an insane price, but the name Mark Waid, Nicole Maines, let me know that I'm not going to be dipping in on this one, but you should probably do it if you're interested in this. It's the lead up, and it will be coming out the last week, I believe, in June. Absolute Power, the main event, DC moves back to a Wednesday new comic book release date with the first issue of this 4-part limited series written by Mark Waid and drawn by Dan Mora. Failsafe and the Braniac Queen have enabled Amanda Waller to capture the powers of every metahuman on Earth as the planet falls into chaos and the heroes are targeted by a disinformation campaign. Batman forms a resistance movement to fight back. Obviously, I will not be reading this one because the name Mark Waid is on there, but this will be the mainline series, and this is the first issue coming out in July, I believe the first week of July. And it's going to take some really good writing to explain why Amanda Waller would be in charge of Failsafe, a robot that's already defeated the Justice League single-handedly, and the entire Batman family on his own. Why would that person, or why would that entity want to be subservient to Amanda Waller? Good luck with that one. Braniac Queen has not been introduced yet, but I imagine is going to be very, very powerful, like a Brainiac character themselves. Why would they want to work for Amanda Waller? She's just a human that has no powers and is just kind of devious. And I'm basically Amanda Wallered out at this point. I'm so glad that Amanda Waller is going to be the focal point of all this stuff. And it's something that I actually can't read anyway because Mark Waid's associated with it. So waste her away as the big DC villain in something that I can't read on many, many levels, but I am done with that character. There is something in that solicitation, or at least the information that DC has put out regarding the mainline Absolute Power series. I don't know if it's troubling, but I do find it a little bit of a red flag. There's going to be a disinformation campaign against superheroes with everything going on in politics and everything. And we know what Mark Waid did when he was at Marvel Comics with King Baby and fucking MODOK and all that kind of stuff. I doubt this dude is going to be able to control himself, and it's probably become very heavy-handed and really, really lame, as if the disinformation campaign that's already been ongoing from Amanda Waller hasn't been lame enough already. And that would be another red flag for me. You've got Amanda Waller's the main villain, red flag. Mark Waid is the writer, a do not enter sign. And then you've also got, we're going to have a disinformation campaign. It's going to be fake news or whatever. There you go. That might not have been for me, even if Jeremy Adams wrote it, who I consider to be a much better writer than Mark Waid these days, along with Josh Williamson and a few other people at DC Comics. So I guess it's good news for me that I'm going to be skipping out on something that I probably would have enjoyed to begin with. Next up is another mini-series. It's basically the exact same concept that Scott Snyder did with Dark Knight's Metal, but different. Absolute Power Task Force 7 is a 3-issue bi-weekly companion series that looks at the events of the series from the point of view of the villains. The first issue, written by Leah Williams with art by Caitlin Yarsky, and introduces the Last Son. And the second issue of Absolute Power Task Force 7, written by John Lehman and drawn by Max Rayner, we meet Amazo Robot Depth Charge. The final issue of Absolute Power Task Force 7 sees the Amazo Robot Jade Stone absorb the powers of the Justice Society of America. The issue is written by Jeremy Adams and drawn by Marco Santucci. If you know me and what I like in comic books, you can tell there's one of these issues that I will read because I basically read and support everything that Jeremy Adams does because he's the best writer at DC Comics right now, in my opinion, even if they don't give him enough work. But if you remember, back in the day in Dark Knight's Metal, which was very, very popular and very, very successful, we had a series of one-shots, and it was what if Bruce Wayne became the other heroes in the DC universe? What if he became Flash and became just very evil in nature, was really contaminated by his vengeance and all that stuff? What if he became Green Lantern? What if he became Aquaman? What if he became Wonder Woman? What if he became Cyborg? And they were actually really cool. Or at least a lot of them were really cool. I love the Red Death. I really liked Dawnbreaker. I liked a lot of the concepts that were done in there, and it was a really, really cool idea. But now we're going to do the exact same idea. Instead of what if Bruce Wayne became those heroes? What if Amanda Waller took their powers and put them in Amazo robots? It's the exact same concept, kind of with a very similar idea of presenting them in one-shots that are companion pieces They're going to show Wonder Woman without powers fighting a Wonder Woman version of Amazo, or the Superman family without powers fighting the Superman Amazo robot, or the Green Lantern family without powers fighting the Amazo robot. Not exactly an original idea, not exactly an original concept, but they are trying to play that one out, and it feels very, very familiar. You know, some of the designs are kind of cool, but these are just variant cover characters. I don't like the mashup stuff. Amazo is a cool character, very cool villain. Now they're just going to put the power sets of the other heroes on them. Yes, I will be reading the one by Jeremy Adams, the third issue. And I think Marco Santucci is a good artist too. Maybe not a great artist, but certainly a good artist. Leah Williams, anything she writes is eminently skippable. John Layman, take him or leave him. I'm more in the leave him category for personal reasons. So doesn't feel to me like there's anything too interesting going on here, but they're just playing out stuff that kind of worked within Dark Knight's Metal, and that was an enormous success. I do not believe Absolute Power will be anything close to the success commercially or critically that, you know, Dark Knight's Metal was. I don't think people are going to be clamoring for this. In fact, most of the recent DC Comics events have basically flopped hard. Crisis on Infinite Earths wasn't really a top seller. I don't believe any issues associated with Dark Crisis were ever the number one selling comic book in the industry for a month, which would be unheard of for a DC Comics Crisis event. DC Comics Night Terrors basically turned everyone off and halted the momentum of a ton of comic books that were actually picking up steam at the time, and I think turned a lot of people off. Beast World, which is surprisingly good. Shockingly, Tom Taylor did a kind of a cool Titans event. It was fun. The art was cool, and it was an enormous flop in comparison to what you would expect a DC Comics event to do. And all the trending tells me that Absolute Power will also be a flop, not mentioning the fact that you have someone like Mark Waid leading the thing, and he's basically a pariah to a large chunk of DC Comics fans at this point that they are not going to want to support, even if it is a good book. So I do think they made some enormous mistakes on this one, and now they're just copying the homework of something else that was very, very successful. Finally, we get Absolute Power Origins, the first issue of a 3-part limited series that's set to reveal the history of Amanda Waller, written by John Ridley and drawn by Aletha Martinez. Absolute Power Origins will explore her hatred of metahumans in a tale of how Waller suffered a catastrophic loss and how she forged her powerlessness into a path of vengeance, fueled by 2 words that changed her life and the lives of everyone in the DC universe: never again. John Ridley is a hack writer. He's absolutely terrible. I wouldn't buy anything that he wrote, even if it was my favorite character. Aletha Martinez is a really, really bad artist. The only time I can remember seeing any of her work was in that like Wonder Woman Amazon war thing that Clunrad did that was just awful. That was even a bigger bomb than all the other stuff I was talking about. I forgot about that event, the Amazon war, where the hell that thing was. Aletha Martinez was doing a lot of the illustrations there. It was terrible. The biggest thing to glean about this series is that fucking cover. I'm certain you noticed it. It was right in the middle of the graphic. What is that? If that's not AI fucking stuff, I don't know what is. That looks like something I could create on Midjourney with a couple of prompts. It looks so terrible. It's such a turnoff. As soon as I saw that cover, I was like, oh my God, that might be the worst comic book cover I've ever seen in my life. Just absolutely horrendous stuff. And then the portrayal of Amanda Waller through the 3 covers is really weird. In the left one, she's really, I don't know, she's the wall. In the middle one, she's just kind of looks weird. And then the right one, she's kind of hot. Why? Amanda Waller is not supposed to be a physically attractive character. And I don't care about Amanda Waller's origin. I don't care about the character in general. But this is just going to be a writer making Amanda Waller out to be very sympathetic. And they're going to give her the Magneto treatment. And it's not really her fault. You know, a hero killed somebody that she loved on accident trying to save somebody else. And it's the most modern writing tropey thing you can do with a villain, to take away their agency as villains is making them sympathetic. And really, they have a point. It's not their fault that they want to take all the powers from the metahumans, and she's a diabolical, disgusting creature, and she misuses her authority and manipulates people. It really wasn't her fault. She lost somebody. What's she supposed to do? So I would have zero interest in this. And like I said, I read down the whole thing and everyone involved in it. The first one, the anthology book, has some good creators on there, has some good artists. It's only $5. It's going to be a little bit oversized. If you're interested in the event, I would kind of check that one out. The only comic book I'm going to read any of the stuff that I've actually mentioned here is the Jeremy Adams Task Force 7 thing, just because it's Jeremy Adams, not because it's Absolute Power. I checked out on this event as soon as they said it was Mark Waid on the book. Certainly nothing to do with Dan Mora. I think he's one of the best artists that DC Comics has, and one of the best artists in just the industry in general. It's unfortunate that he's been saddled with this douchebag that's probably going to end up ruining his career, similar to what Tom King did to Clayman, but probably in a worse manner, because I think Mark Waid is more hateable than Tom King, and I think Tom King is pretty hateable. I think he's more hateable than Tom Taylor, and Tom Taylor has the most punchable face in all of comic books. That's kind of the way I feel about Mark Waid. So I will not be partaking in this. There won't be an event wrap-up of Absolute Power where I talk about my feelings about it, because I have no feelings at this point, and I will not be reading it no matter what. But those are the pieces of information that I do have. I hope you enjoy it, and you haven't taken the stance that I have, and it's really awesome. I certainly doubt it, given the information that we do have. If you'd like more conversations about comic books and all the other stuff going around there, and the stuff I'm certainly am reading every single week, you need to go to Thinking Critical Patreon. We got lots of awesome podcasts with your favorite guests like Doc, Aaron, Jim, Nick from 32 Flavors, and Nick Weiser. Lots of me in there as well. We got exclusive reviews. We've got a solicitations video for DC and Marvel exclusive to Patreon as well. All kinds of great stuff happening over there. There's a link in the video description, and I hope to see you there very, very soon.